Hi, Carter. We are flying through this book. We're on chapter 26 right now of the Green Ember, and it's called Bound. They stayed with Maggie Weaver until lunch, then went down to the savory den. It was packed today, but even so, Heather was certain everyone didn't eat down there. There wasn't nearly enough room. After a short, frustrated search for Pickett, they gave up and decided to go ahead and eat. So, Emma said, what did you think of her? Oh, she was amazing, said Heather. One of the most incredible rabbits I've ever seen. I didn't want to leave. I knew you wanted to stay, Emma said, but that's just it. Everyone wants to. So there's kind of an unwritten rule that she politely doesn't let anyone stay too long. An hour, maybe half of that again. So many want her advice that she tries not to let anyone take all her time. So when she said, oh, my children, could you take this basket to Master Shelling? Was that our cue to go? Exactly, said Emma, smiling. She's subtle but effective. Time with her is like gold around here. And her sewing is unreal, said Heather. It's like she's always doing two jobs. Lord Rake says she's the wisest rabbit he knows, and I think he knows everyone. He goes on, or he goes to her for advice every week at least. She takes no apprentice, eats little, and gets more sewing done than the next best three. She's a wonder. Now I understand what Dr. Ziegler said to you. A lot of Maggie hold the Helmer. Yes, Emma said, frowning. Helmer's a plague, and Mrs. Weaver's a cure. It was my number one plan for getting Pickett well again. His foot will heal, and pretty fast, I think. It's the other stuff I'm worried about. I'm so frustrated he wouldn't come. I'm sorry, Emma. Thanks for caring about us. I feel like it's costing you, said Heather, glancing around and seeing once again scowls and frowns. Maybe we should look for him again after lunch, said Emma, brushing off her concern. I agree. I don't like him being alone, said Heather. I'm getting the feeling we're not exactly welcome in this place. Pickett wasn't alone. He'd eaten lunch early and made his way back up the steps through King Whitson's garden into hallway round, past the blast powder barrel and its wary guards, and into the sunlit air of the village green. His foot felt better, but he knew it was still a little ways from being healed. For the first time in days, he knew precisely what he wanted to do. There was one thing and one thing only he was interested in. He wanted to fight anyone who had anything to do with what happened to his family. Good morning, Pickett, Hayward said as Pickett passed the stone tables that lay alongside the endless neat rows of hedges. You seem to be moving better today than yesterday. Thanks, Pickett said, not stopping. He didn't want to get sidetracked by any crazy talk about how straight these hedgerows were. He had a crazy thing to do himself. You're without your female friends today, Hayward said, matching Pickett's stride, walking along beside him. Pickett sighed, yes, I'm free of my jailers at the moment. Then he added, or I was, under his breath. That reminds me of my hedges, Hayward said. Pickett had a feeling that everything reminded him of his hedges. Sometimes I feel like I'm imprisoned by my hedges. He tucked his enormous shears beneath his left arm and with his right hand stroked his chin. Other times I feel like I'm the jailer. I keep them in line. I restrict their movements. It's really some deep, deep. Hayward became suddenly speechless when he recognized where his little walk with Pickett was taking him, right to the large maple and right in front of Helmer the Black, who was lying in the shade. Pickett looked over at Hayward, whose wide, suspicious eyes said everything his mouth didn't. I'm sure you have some clipping to do, Hayward, Pickett said. I won't tie you up. Hayward nodded and was about to speak when they heard a gravelly voice mumble, I think we should tie him up just for fun. I'll see you later, Hayward said, and he turned and walked quickly away. Pickett stood beneath the mostly barren boughs of the massive maple tree, staring at the reclining rabbit. Pickett saw that there were still a few tied-off traps in the trees above, more insane games of life or death. He noticed, too, the black shield with its awful emblem, that red diamond symbol that so nearly matched the one worn by Red-Eye Garlickson, who had tried to kill him and his sister and had done who knew what to the rest of his family. He noticed, too, the impressive sword, also black, with a solitary emerald inset on the hilt. Now that he was chosen, he saw that there were flecks of gray in Helmer's fur. Pickett had thought him younger, but now he could really see him well with sunlight streaming in. He looked haggard and unwell. Helmer didn't move or speak. He lay on his back, fiddling with a short knife. "I'd like you to train me," said Pickett. "I need to learn how to fight." "That's the guard's business," Helmer said dismissively. He tossed the knife into the air, letting it spin and spin until it came down again, and he caught it by its handle. "Go cry to Lord Rake." "I don't want to." "Well, I don't care," said Helmer. "He's in charge of all military personnel in this mountain, and I wouldn't train a ladybug without his permission. And I never talk to anyone, let alone train them. And I'm struggling to see the difference between you and a ladybug." "So you would do it if he approved?" Pickett asked. "I thought you hated Lord Rake." "No, I wouldn't," said Helmer. "You wouldn't help me get revenge on those who ruined my family?" Pickett said in a growl. His temper was rising. Helmer threw and caught the blade several times, as if he had no interest in the young rabbit. Finally, he said, "That's right, I wouldn't. As much as I'm moved by your need for revenge, and that is definitely my main interest in life, I'm sorry, little one, I can't be bothered with you." Pickett seethed. All the hurt and helplessness, all the blundering and misery in his heart rose like a slow-building storm. "Listen to me," he said. His voice was a surprise, even to himself. Somehow he kept it even, but packed it with all the menace he could muster. "I'm sick of being told what to do. I'm tired of being the helpless crybaby who needs his diaper changed. I want to do something about what's been done to me and mine. And the way I see it, being the best soldier in this army is my only way of ever doing something about that. The way I see it, you're the rabbit to train me. And if you won't, I'll never leave you in peace." "Oh, you'll leave me, lad," Helmer said, "the second I want you out of my sight." "I think you're underestimating me." "I have no estimation of you at all, child," said Helmer. "You're nothing." Pickett felt these words like blows, but he held his ground. He was silent for a while, and then he said, "What happened to you?" "None of your concern," said Helmer. "I guess you don't mind that your name's a disgrace?" "Same as yours," said Helmer. Pickett didn't exactly understand what he meant. Did Helmer know of all the blunders and mistakes he'd made in the last few days? "You disgust," Pickett began, but Helmer cut him off. "Enough," he said. "Now, I know you're pathetic, lad, so I'll let you dish out your rotten fruit here for a little, but I'm full of it now. Get out of here." "But," Pickett began again. "Not one more word," Helmer said. There was silence for a moment. Then Pickett erupted. "You coward!" Helmer half rose and his arm shot out. The knife moved quickly. Pickett thought for a moment that Helmer had thrown it at him, but it sailed over his head, slicing through a rope and sunk in a tree. A massive wooden bird, released by the snapped cord, bore down on Pickett. Pickett acted before he could decide anything. He lunged, but he'd forgotten about his bad foot. He buckled, unable to escape. At the last moment, a strong kick from Helmer sent the swooping menace past him. Helmer sliced the cord with another knife, and the wooden bird fell to earth. Pickett clutched at his foot, pain racing up his leg. He would have escaped had his foot held up. Of course, that only reminded him of how he'd hurt his foot to begin with. It was always something. Another layer of bitter resentment lay over him like a cloak. Pickett's fury outstripped his pain. When Helmer passed him, walking leisurely back beneath the tree, he lunged for the black rabbit, this time launching from his good foot, but Helmer was too quick. Pickett was knocked back to the ground, groaning from new pains. By the time Pickett recovered enough to try to slink off, he looked up to see his sister, along with Emma and Lord Rake, walking quickly his way. Heather looked worried and angry. "Perfect," said Pickett. "Pile it on." His shame and embarrassment knew no end. "What's happening here?" Lord Rake asked as he reached the perimeter of the maple trees. Helmer was lying down again. Pickett struggled to his feet. There was a gash in the earth where the wooden bird skidded to a halt. "Helmer, what have you done now?" Helmer didn't respond. Lord Rake advanced on him, but Pickett spoke up. "You were just showing me a few things." "Pickett," Heather asked, eyebrows arching and mouth tight. "Yes," said Pickett. "He was kind enough to show me some maneuvers. I want to be in the guard, so he was helping me." Lord Rake's frown said he didn't believe this for a second. Emma was trying to get Pickett to let her examine his foot. "You'll need to rest it, Pickett," she said, shaking her head. "What, really?" Heather began, but Pickett looked at her, his face pleading for her to be quiet, and let him escape with a shred of dignity. "Let's go," she said. While they got ready to leave, Lord Rake peered down at Helmer. Pickett thought another confrontation was imminent. He tried to block it out, leaning on Heather as they walked slowly away. His embarrassment and resentment rumbled around inside him, but it was no longer a seething anger. He felt bent up, broken, and worthless. Tears came hot and heavy, sliding down his face as he fought to keep from sobbing. He'd never felt so low in all his life. Then, out of the awkward silence, he heard a gravelly voice call out, "I accept you." "What?" Emma, Heather, and Lord Rake all said together. Pickett turned and saw Helmer stood just behind an astonished Lord Rake. Helmer's fist was over his heart. He said it again. "I accept you." "Now, wait a minute," Lord Rake began, but Pickett's raised voice silenced him for a moment. "I'm accepted?" Pickett said, tears standing in his eyes. He had stopped crying. His fist was over his heart. "I bind you with all honor to release you better after," Helmer said. "I am bound," Pickett said, pausing to recall the words he had marked to the calling ceremony of Gloria Folds, "by honor and fealty to serve you." They bowed to each other. Helmer walked away, back to the partial shade of the maple tree. Pickett, leaning on Heather, turned and walked the other way. Heather was too astonished to speak, and it was Emma's turn to brood. "Tomorrow morning, Ladybug," Helmer shouted back to him, and Pickett grinned.